Hey everybody, Josh. The media here, and Israel is shutting off the internet of all Palestinians, and what they're about to do should sicken everyone. We are getting news as they are entering into Palestinian territory to absolutely devastate and annex the place. We're getting word 800,000 Palestinians are being silenced as Israel severs internet before deadly advance. And of course, we've heard many times from Israel that, oh, well, we were just defending ourselves when we blew up this village, or we blew up this church, or we blew up this mosque, or we blew up this hospital, or we blew up this school, or we blew up this nursery school. We've heard this many times. Oh, that aid vehicle, they were Hamas, which Israel armed and funded in the first place. And then we find out they said, well, they ambushed us. We had to kill them. And then we find out that they put them all in a mass grave and they left the cell phone on one of them. And then you look at the cell phone video and they were all in ambulances with flashing lights and vests on that. And it was clearly marked aid, and they blew them up and lied about it. So without the internet, they can get away with this stuff. And of course, I think that there are a lot of lies being told, obviously, on the ground in Palestine, up in Gaza, of course, by Israelis. And of course, we're going to jump into that. Also, the idea that they are going into this, what they call a real estate bonanza. Smotrich says Israel working with Trump on real estate bonanza in Gaza Strip. Smotrich is the absolute scumbag who is a finance minister in Israel, who also called for the annexation of Syria right before mysteriously HDS, formerly Al Nusra Front, went in there and overthrew Assad. And there's a lot of censorship happening as people are seeing their tweets get taken down at the request of the Israeli government. As Netanyahu, who talks a lot about free speech, is saying that people need to be silenced into oblivion if they dare talk about the starvation of children in Gaza, which is indeed a real thing. Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers push bill to strip passports over Israel criticism, something we've talked about in previous videos, and much more is happening, including what we're seeing with Charlie Kirk, how he refused Netanyahu funding offer, $150 million allegedly, was frightened by pro-Israel forces before death, friend reveals. There are ultimate moves to censor people. Mike Johnson holds private meeting with Jewish leaders, pledges to screen out anti-Israel GOP candidates. We are watching something the likes of which we've never seen before. We have a lot of news on Israel right now to get into, and the censorship moves they are making across the board. Before we go into that and how it affects you, I hope people go and check those links below for things like heavensharvest.com. For long-term storable food that's non-GMO, there's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you will get 5% off, as well as free shipping on these items. This is so incredibly important, so you don't fall into the ultimate censorship trap of you being forced into food rations on social credit scores with digital IDs, which is the end goal for all of this insane warfare we are witnessing. So, my friends, go and check that out, heavensharvest.com, code WAM, W-A-M. And also, of course, check out our link for Wave Watch 2.0, where you will save $100 if you use code WAM. And again, this is like having a rife machine on your wrist, 1,100 frequencies. Great for sleep, balancing of emotions, mental clarity, boosting of energy. Again, this is a great thing to have versus, the bad frequencies we're witnessing on a regular basis from cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, etc. So I urge people to go and check that out. WaveWatch 2.0, linked in the description, code WAM, W-A-M, and that's $100 off. Make sure to hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already on Rumble and BitChute at World Alternative Media. And let's get into this. So, of course, they're trying to censor all of us really badly right now. And one of the ways they do that is just shutting off the internet. Now, this is a major move that they have been making for some time to normalize us to this so that they can, of course, with the grid down scenarios due to weather or cyber attacks that they claim, of course, blaming it on Iran or whatever they want to do, leads to them being able to essentially shut down people's internet and then come in with, out of the face of the panic, come in with a new system of internet governance, which involves more surveillance, which, of course, as we recently did a video on regarding the Charlie Kirk Trojan horse, you could see our breakdown of how they are using that tragedy to bring in a surveillance state. Of course, we're seeing biometrics across the board. That is one of the ultimate forms of censorship, my friends, because it does not only censor your ability to speak, it censors your ability to search, to find, to learn. It puts you in a situation where you cannot eat the food you want. You will be pushed with digital IDs into the digital gulag, essentially, with social credits, and they will ration the foods to you that they see fit for you based on your behavior. Of course, something that the World Economic Forum has been speaking of for a long time, and something that, of course, the Israeli government seems to be a testing ground for. We know that they've been using Palantir tech with AI drones to indiscriminately bomb children. We also know that they have been deciding who gets aid and who doesn't based on AI and facial recognition, which I believe they will utilize. I've done a video on this before in the United States and Canada and other places for that future social credit system. They're really utilizing it in warfare in order to find out where that could be utilized in the future. So we have 800,000 Palestinians silenced as Israel severs internet before deadly advance, as of course they don't want you to see what they are doing. Israel deliberately cut off all communications in Gaza City ahead of a major military escalation, a tactic repeatedly used before mass atrocities. Explosive-laden robots and airstrikes are flattening civilian neighborhoods while the world is left blind by the total information blackout. Over 65,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 2023, with Israel blocking ceasefire talks while U.S. allies provide unconditional political cover. By the way, there's evidence that we're seeing far more than 65,000 deaths, but of course it's hard to document all of it. But it's just absolutely atrocious, no doubt about it. Journalists, it says, risk their lives to send updates via rooftops and eSIMs as Israel targets media workers, ensuring no witnesses remain to document war crimes. Israel's endgame is revealed, AI-driven smart cities and resorts built on stolen land after displacing or eradicating Gaza's population through starvation bombs and silence. Absolutely horrifying. Of course, we have Smotrich, one of the biggest scumbags out of Israel, which is saying a lot. I mean, this guy is absolute scum. He is apparently, he says he's working with Trump on real estate bonanza in Gaza Strip. Israel Finance Minister said, we have to see how we are dividing up the land in percentages. This guy is a real piece of work, my friends. And of course, they clearly have Trump blackmailed with Epstein. And people say, well, maybe he didn't like sleep with children or anything. Well, even if he didn't, they can still blackmail you by just having videos of you having sex with women. And Trump ran like Miss Teen USA and Miss Universe. I mean, you can imagine, and I'm not even blaming him for like, being promiscuous as a billionaire when he was a bachelor and everything. Obviously he's a man, these things happen, but like you have, if it's of course, if it's an adult, but if you have like video of that kind of stuff, there's a good chance that you could be blackmailed by that. And I don't think Trump wants a video of himself naked out there on the internet, obviously. And I think even if it's not children, it could just be that. And of course they don't want that out there, and Israel holds that blackmail. Mossad owns that blackmail. Epstein bragged about being a Mossad agent to his ex-girlfriends, as well as took a plea deal over it. So again, this isn't like some crazy talk, and they have been trying to make this go away. And now Kash Patel is saying there's no evidence that that Epstein did anything wrong. Like never traffic kids or traffic women or anyone, he says. I mean, these people are clearly compromised, and Israel holds the keys. So again, you see them going in for this annexation and going along with this massive censorship, which only benefits the Israeli government. It does not benefit the US government, which has been under attack multiple times, has been struck by the Israeli government, by the Israeli military that they so fund. USS Liberty, anyone? I mean, they've done massive spy rings on and done assassinations on American politicians. I mean, it's just obviously they're cucked to them because they're blackmailed to them, and they're financed by them. And this is a major issue. Twitter admits they deleted my tweets because Israel asked them to, then lies for the rationale, says Sean King over at thenorthstar.com. And Grok, the Twitter AI bot, said it was likely the very department of the child predator that we exposed that made the request. I mentioned this in a previous video. There's a lot of censorship coming out of Israel right now. He says here, when my reporting on Israel's cyber chief went viral, Twitter X erased every word of it. They can silence me there, but they can't silence me here. I keep all of this free for the world, but I need you to stand with me. Okay, they asked to be a subscriber, all that. It says, I swear it's been a crazy 24 hours. Yesterday morning, while I fell asleep, or while I was asleep, Elon Musk deleted hundreds of tweets I made about the Israeli pedophile Tom Alexandrovich, who was arrested for sex crimes against children in Las Vegas, then allowed to flee to Israel without even a simple hearing. If you don't know, my friends, Israel is like the number one country in the world that can hold pedophiles from all over the world, as long as they're Jewish, extradition free within their country. They can protect them. It's absolutely sick. It says, now we know why Israel demanded they delete my tweets. For the first time, Twitter now admits it was them who deleted my tweets. And here's the reason they gave. And Grok says, yes, based on verified reports, X voluntarily deleted the tweets under doxing policies, likely prompted by Israel's cyber unit where Alexandrovich worked. This is X itself. This lacks a public U.S. legal mandate, effectively limiting scrutiny and indirectly protecting the accused from public exposure. Now, again, we are dealing with a very nefarious entity that is controlling your life on the internet in ways that most people don't even realize, and what gets seen and what doesn't get seen in the algorithm. Of course, Elon Musk laid out, obviously, he's diehard pro-Israel, but he also is laying out the technocratic groundwork for the New World Order, for the Great Reset, calling for you to go on a UBI to replace your job, universal basic income, so that you will own nothing and you'll be happy, on X, which is being registered as a bank while getting Pentagon contracts to put chips in your brain attached to a Pentagon-funded mesh network in the sky, all the while creating X money and creating an algorithm that's based on social credit scores. This is clearly the mandate to move forward into that digital ID system. And he's working with Israel, which is, again, it's very dangerous going forward, because the ultimate censorship will not just be your words. It'll be your very thought, your very ability to go and, buy food at the store or have your own food that you want versus what the government says you must eat. Chris Minahan posted on X, Netanyahu calls for censorship. Israel is accused of starving children, pretty much the way that in the Middle Ages, Jews were accused of killing Christian children for their blood, says Netanyahu. And it says, we have to do something about the algorithms at the social networks, he says. Now, they're calling for censorship while he says, like, we are pro-free speech. It's the same thing on the left when we have, like, the German government officials like Schultz, who I mentioned in my previous video, saying, we have freedom of speech in Europe. Everyone can say what he wants, even if he's a billionaire. What we do not accept if this is supporting extreme right positions. So basically, if you don't agree with me, you're extreme right, and therefore you shouldn't be able to talk. In Netanyahu's case, it's like, if you say things against us in any way, then you shouldn't be allowed to talk. Other than that, you can say whatever you want. It's a joke, and it's a really bad one. And it's that shift that we've been warning of, which we see in the United States right now as U.S. lawmakers push bill to strip passports over Israel criticism. As I wrote on X at World Alt Media the other day, I wrote, if you want to know who owns you, ask who you cannot criticize. You cannot call yourself a free speech absolutist when you throw people in jail for burning a flag, a piece of cloth, or deport people for criticizing a foreign country. Tell me you're blackmailed by Israel without telling me you're blackmailed by Israel. We know that Marco Rubio certainly is blackmailed by Israel because, the guy was helping arm and fund ISIL and ISIS with John McCain and Lindsey Graham almost a decade and a half ago. And there's photos of him doing it. It's just, we've known for a long time. We called them out when they announced back in November last year that Rubio was going to be the Secretary of State. Now, Charlie Kirk refused Netanyahu funding offer, was frightened by pro-Israel forces behind death, friend reveals, and this is at the Gray Zone. And Max Blumenthal, who knew Charlie Kirk, I knew him as well, but Max Blumenthal knew him very well. It says a Trump insider and a longtime friend of Charlie Kirk tells the Gray Zone how the assassinated conservative leader's turning point on Israel or Israeli influence provoked a private backlash from Netanyahu allies that left him angry and afraid. The source said anxiety spread within the Trump administration after an apparent Israeli spy operation was uncovered. Now, we know there's a lot of strange stuff with the Charlie Kirk assassination, and of course we've done videos on it, and a lot of it points towards Israel. Now, again, this should be concerning to everyone, because if we are at the point of censorship where they just murder people, and they'll murder friends and enemies, my friends, whatever it means to bring in their manufactured narrative, as long as it works for them, that's what they do. It doesn't matter, again, if they kill their own friends. To them, it's all about that ultimate narrative and that sacrifice of all humankind and the humanity within. Of course, we have a continued push for total censorship, whether by fear of assassination or by silencing on the algorithm, or by actual just takedowns, or eventually jail and being thrown out of the country, deported. Mike Johnson holds private meeting with Jewish leaders, pledges to screen out anti-Israel GOP candidates, says Chris Menahan over at Information Liberation. Now, we've seen this happening for a long time, and Trump is calling for the same thing and going after, big time, going after Thomas Massie, who we've had on our show many times. And they've done these things to people like Cynthia McKinney in the past. They've tried it on Dr. Ron Paul. But again, Israel's holding the keys. Pretty obvious. Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed mutual defense pact. This is a nuclear armed pact. And of course, this is something that I've been talking about for a while, where it will correlate with Iran, and they will create this manufactured war that will kill countless people and lead to further emergency orders where they can force you into this technocratic system. As they leave the dollar, and we see that shift, the manufactured shift from the West to the East by design, which the West is heavily involved in themselves in actually manufacturing in the first place. Over 19,400 children killed in Gaza by Israel genocide, as Israel genocide marks 700th day. The death toll is equivalent to one person killed every 52 minutes in the most dangerous place to be a child. Absolutely sickening, devastating. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. People cheering on Israel. What do you like? The terrorism in the region? They'll all say that. Like, what do you like? They're the only ones in the region that aren't, waging jihad against us. I'm like, the people that they planted in the region, the Wahhabists, were planted by Israel in the first place. They have been involved in every major terror operation in the Middle East in some way or shape or form, whether it just be through arming and funding the group, like Hamas, like Al-Qaeda, like ISIS, like the Taliban, like the Mujahideen, Muslim Brotherhood, et cetera, doing proxy revolutions, overthrowing governments. HTS is another example, formerly Al Nusra Front. They do all these things, and then the region becomes devastated by these events that they created and script out, and then people say, oh, well, now we need Israel to defend us from the people in that region, the mass migration, which Netanyahu brags about sending migrants to the West. I mean, people are so cocked by Israel, so cocked, and they believe that Israel is going to save them from all these things in the Middle East that Israel itself is the proxy for, is creating. It is a circle. Problem, reaction, solution, repeat for eternity, the Hegelian dialectic. People just keep asking for the same entity that created the problem to come in and solve it. It's sick. Israel has been involved in most of the major events in the Middle East in the past 65, 70 years, and has devastated the region, planted Wahhabism, took places like Afghanistan from a first world country into a third world country, destroyed Iraq by pushing the US to go to war with them, which killed millions of people. And they've done the same thing in Syria with HTS recently. They're devastating Lebanon, Yemen, obviously Palestine, Gaza. Now they're pushing for Iran to be absolutely devastated. I mean, Israel is a terrorist country. And they're creating this veneer of other people being terrorists so that they can continue to rain their terror on citizens' heads. It's horrifying, absolutely horrifying. Now, we have this out of Middle East Eye, Gaza. New regulations require all aid entering Strip to be sourced from Israel only. I wonder how that's going to go wrong. At the same time, as they are silencing 800,000 Palestinians as Israel severs internet, as they go in and devastate the region and then tell lies about what they're doing there, They're also requiring all aid entering Strip to be sourced from Israel only. How convenient is that? U.S. Foreign Affairs Committee approves expansion of secretive arms stockpile for Israel. They continue to flood Israel with weapons, which they have in many cases used against the U.S. and have trafficked to Hamas so that they could justify going after them. Where is the humanity, my friends? Where is the humanity? When we have people like Charlie Kirk worried about being killed by Israel for daring to go against them and turning down $150 million from them to support Israel, while they're saying they're going to revoke passports and kick people out of the country, and in many cases even jail people for criticizing Israel, as they've done in Europe for quite some time, as Netanyahu calls for the censorship of all people who criticize Israel, and we actually see tweets getting taken down because of it, as they call for a total annexation of Palestine, as they try to ban politicians who aren't pro-Israel from being elected. We are living in a sick, sick world. And if you want to know, as I've said before, if you want to know who controls, you ask who you cannot criticize. And we've seen it far too long. And they're trying to paint the issue of being against Israeli genocide. They want to paint the picture as this is just something that left-wingers believe, which is a total psyop. You get crazy college campus kids who don't actually know what they're talking about. They only say it's a genocide because their college professor told them, because they're indoctrinated, rather than people. Like, the reality is, on the ground, if you talk to people, most people just recognize, intelligent people just recognize, non-emotional people just recognize that what Israel is doing is a genocide, of course. But the people we see at the front of the crowds, on television, in the radio, online, are the crazies with blue hair who probably wouldn't last a second in Palestine. And that's not an attack on Palestine. It's more of an attack on them for being weak and deranged. But my point is, this is how they create these veneers. They create the two sides so they clash together so that people cannot be logical and look from the outside and see the flaws on either side of an argument, and why we need to look at, well, obviously Israel is influencing all this stuff. They're paying politicians off. They're blackmailing them. They're murdering men, women, and children. They're also arming and funding Hamas. And of course, we are seeing on the other side university students indoctrinated to burn things down over what Israel's doing, even though they don't know anything about Israel or Palestine, as they're sitting on campuses in the United States or Canada or UK. We need to just be the strong, independent thinkers here, not support politicians to stop this, because they won't. They're paid off. They're controlled. But look at it from the perspective of, how can I as an individual starve out the beast? And I've been saying for a long time, the ultimate move is a bankrupting of humanity itself, to push us to a point where we have no humanity left. And what is humanity, my friends? Well, we could say empathy and obviously consciousness and all that, and that's all true. It's also individualism and self-responsibility, our ability to control our own environment around us. And of course, that is the basis of freedom itself as well. So freedom and humanity are the same thing, at least within our consciousness. And of course, that means what? Well, if we're complaining and we're continuing to, depend on grocery stores, on the internet as it stands, on the grid that the government controls, on the water that the government controls, and are probably definitely poisoning us with, if we're depending on, the monetary system, which is built to impoverish us so that we become dependent, then of course, yes, we will remain dependent rather than the basis of humanity, which is independence. So people don't have to listen to me when I say from mountaintops for years on end without making pretty much any money off of it that people should go and stock up. But I do think of that as a real solution, so you aren't dependent on their food system later. So anyway, I'm not trying to lecture anyone here. I just want people to be fighting alongside me in the fight for humanity in the future. So I urge people, again, go check out things like heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items. Now, people will say, well, how is that stopping the genocide in Israel? Because if you starve out the beast, if you aren't dependent on the beast that feeds the proxy that feeds Israel, which then they use to murder men, women, and children. And obviously, an information liberation is important here. But if you starve out the beast, if you aren't dependent on the beast, then they depend on the dependence of the masses, you see. Then they fall apart. As they say, cut off the head of the snake and the body will die. All metaphorical, of course. So there's heavensharvest.com. Just stock up on this for yourself and your family, my friends. I don't know why people would risk not having anything to back themselves up. We have things like Wild Pastures, where if you go to our link, you'll get 20% off for life plus $15 off your first box of 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised pork, pasture-raised chicken, and wild-caught seafood, no mRNA, no GMOs, hormones, antibiotics, steroids, feedlots, pesticides, or any other chemicals, all raised on regenerative family farms in 48 U.S. states, delivered to your door, temperature-controlled and customizable as you see fit. You help save the farmers in your local area, you save yourself money, and you save your health. It's a very good move going forward, and I hope people take it seriously and go check it out in those links below. Of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we have WaveWatch 2.0. We are being hit by electromagnetic frequency. That is very bad. And of course, I find this to be a great solution. WaveWatch 2.0, save $100 when you use code WAM, W-A-M, 1,100 plus frequencies. This is a really cool thing to have on your wrist. It's like a rifle machine on your wrist. We also, I want to mention, withdrawing from the monetary system, very important solution going forward. I urge people to go and check out firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/, and there you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium, hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. Again, you get to work with Mark Gonzalez, get a free initial consultation and a free investment package. I think it's very important going forward to use that option as a way to, first of all, work with someone who is very awake on this stuff, awake like you and I, but also, you know, allowing you to get outside of that digital monetary framework that has been forcing people into the beast system for so long. So I urge people to go and check that out in the links below. And of course, you know, one more thing I want to mention for your health, check out vni.life/WAM, W-A-M. This is super cool. Super supplements here. Use code WAM15, W-A-M-15, and you'll get 15% off on these items. Especially check out like Protovite. So you can subscribe long-term to them and get, you know, things every month or every couple months, and save more money. But again, this is amazing. It's 100 plus vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. And look what happens before and after. This is before the toxins in the blood, the circulation problem. And then look what happens 5 minutes after taking it. Restore negative charge, free flow of the red blood cells. And again, we are also seeing 4 times the size of white blood cells. This usually takes a month to do. This is happening in 5 minutes with Protovite. So it's just absolutely amazing. So go and check that out. Anyway, as we close this off, if you want to help support us, we truly appreciate it, and we need it. We need it badly. More than ever. I'm being screwed by banks right now, and they keep shutting me down and making it impossible for me to survive. You guys are the only thing keeping us alive, and we're not mainstream alternative media, so therefore I continue to get shut down, but you guys continue to keep us up and running. So I want to thank everyone who has helped us. And again, we have gogetfunding.com. We have Patreon, Subscribestar. Anything helps to keep us alive, my friends. $4.99 or more on Patreon or Subscribestar a month will get you exclusive content, as well as like it's early access, and you can get personalized video messages from me with if you ask any question. And of course, we also have that on X at World Alt Media if you subscribe there. Of course, we have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. And of course, we have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here or check out in the description in text form if you please as well. We have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. And of course, we have a Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise. Now, you can find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we're banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, this is what it's all about. Live freely, live by example. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.